I'm gonna shoot you up with something that's gonna kill you deader than a hammer.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the Inquisition. Today I want to take a little bit of your time and talk about some things that generally get overlooked, and that is the stats of this game. Okay, so stats make up a great amount of a lot of games here. The basic principle is the higher your stats in certain areas, obviously actions pertaining to those stats are going to be a little bit better. Case in point, for this game at least, bonus range damage means you're going to be doing more range damage, and obviously bonus melee damage means you're going to be doing more melee damage. Pretty simple, right? Well, where things get confusing is trying to figure out exactly what that entails. So let's get into this. All right, so for this video we're going to be taking a look at the basic las pistols you get in the beginning of the game when you go Crusader with this cool little armor here. Even though right now it's kind of glitching out, not much I can do about that. Yay, Neocore. But yeah, so first thing you need to understand, on any character that's rocking two weapons, you have to account for both sets of damages here. Even if you're rocking a weapon and a shield, the shield will still have a damage value as well, and that has to be accounted. So here we go. 48 damage. Well, for this test, we are only going to be looking at the damage output of single shot, okay? So that's actually 47 damage. But guess what? We have two of these. So we're going to basically factor both those together. So for that, we're going to bring out our good friend, Mr. Calculator. Okay, so let's bring him on the board. Sorry about that. All right, so Mr. Calculator, what is 47 times 2? That's going to come out to 94. Now, you also notice that since we're focusing only on single shot, that there is a buff that we get on the weapon itself, plus 2% for single shot. Okay, there you go. Now, there's a little bit of confusion about whether or not you apply this first or after other calculations. For argument's sake, we're going to apply this first. So we basically get to add 4% right now, and that comes out to 97.76. Now remember, when we look at our character here, we're getting a bonus range damage of 11%. Now we're not getting any sort of heat bonuses here, so that's right out the window. And we have absolutely no skills that could be affecting any of this right now, so there you go. It's all going to be those factors we just talked about. So 11%, so bring up handy dandy Mr. Calculator, plus 11%. All right, so you come up with a total of 108.5136. Okay, so let's go and actually see this in action. We're going to be doing one of the early missions here and primarily focusing on just using one skill. All right, so let's get to it.
Perish, filth!
Alrighty, and we're back. And what did we see there, ladies and gentlemen? Well, we saw 105 pretty consistently across the board. But 105 is not 108, Shiv. You have to be wrong. Oh my god. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. At first, that's exactly what I was thinking too. It was like, oh my god, what the hell? But then I remembered there's this little thing that we have, and it bears the reason that the enemy would have it as well. Damage reduction as well as resistance. Okay, so let's get to this now. So damage reduction is a percentage off. Okay, so if we were to take this 108, right, which this is obviously not how much it's going to be, but if we were to say deduct that just off damage reduction of our own armor, minus 11%, we would get 96. That still doesn't account, right? Still doesn't account. So that could possibly mean one of two things. One, the damage reduction on the enemies is far lower than what we have here at 11%. or they also have resistances as well. So in this case, since it's a starter mission, I wouldn't be surprised if they had something closer to, oh, let's say 2%. Okay, so let's bring this back here. Actually, hold on, make sure we get everything. So 108. Yeah, we're rounding at this point. Minusing, say 2% equals. Oh, look at that. 105.84. That is almost perfect. Almost perfect, ladies and gentlemen. Now, figuring out how much resist actually factors is a little bit of a difficulty here. I'm still hoping that the developers will actually release this. I put in a request for it on the Steam discussion forums, but as it stands right now, who knows? But it comes out perfectly from what we saw. So if all those starter guys have basically a 2% damage reduction, then your 108 becomes 105, which fits almost perfectly, ladies and gentlemen. Matter of fact, if we had that little bit of leftover stuff on the back end, it probably would have shaved it down a little bit more, not a great amount, but a little bit more, closer to probably about 5.5 instead of 6. So yeah, it is that. So that was actually a really good, interesting little example there. Now, we're going to see what happens when we get a critical. Now, I know some of you did see something very specific there in terms of, well, wait a minute, I saw 136. Well, guys, there's a very logical reason for that. If you actually read the little tooltips that pop up, assault, plus 30% damage on targets closer than 10 meters. So when we got within 10 meters or less, we were doing 30% more damage with our single shot, which is actually quite impressive, to be perfectly honest. And there are a couple of these, as a matter of fact, every single one of them has it, so you can definitely get some benefits off that. Dual beams plus this equals a lot of damage, I'm just telling you right now, once you get that scaled up. I used to think that las pistols and las guns were absolutely crap. Okay, las guns are crap, but las pistols are actually relatively decent. Okay, so now let's take a look at something else here. We've got the crit hit strength and the crit chance. Well, we have no strength on this, which means anytime we do a critical, it's going to give us what that amount is actually going to be. Okay, so in most typical RPGs and ARPGs, critical is defined as 1.5x to 2.0x. So let's find out how much that's going to be here.
Die, unclean!
I've eliminated the first tribal champion. I wonder if these mongrel tribes are the descendants of the original inhabitants. I guess I'll know more soon.
Alrighty then, so we saw a bunch of different criticals happening there. We saw a 1.5x, we saw 2.0x, and we saw even greater. So what does this actually mean, ladies and gentlemen? Well, from my understanding, from what we've observed there, is when you get a crit, it basically is going to roll on a kind of damage table, so to speak. Alright, so at the low end of the spectrum, you have 1.5. And then it increases all the way up to, from what I observed, 4.0. Now, this doesn't mean like if you get 1.5, your next one's going to be a 2.0, because the first critical we had was a 2.0. We actually got back-to-back 2.0s and then hit a 1.5. So let's do the math here. 1.5, 2.0, 2.5, 3.0, 3.5, 4.0. So in theory, there are 6 possible variables there. But that still doesn't really answer a very specific question. What the hell does critical strength do? Well, let's find out, shall we? So for this, since we have a skill point, we're going to go over here to critical. And we are just going to put this, we're going to put it right here. All right. And we're going to see what we get off of that. All right. So let's get to that.
Recoil, unclean!
Chew on this.
For the Emperor!
I've eliminated the first tribal champion. I wonder if these mongrel tribes are the descendants of the original inhabitants. I guess I'll know more soon.
Okay, that was very, very strange. So even with a crit hit strength of +2, we were seeing the exact same numbers over and over again when we were critting. We saw 210s, we saw 156, 157s, we saw 200 and some mitigation there against some of the demons because they have resistance. But basically, it was almost identical. Almost identical. Matter of fact, we saw a lot of less of the higher end stuff when we had more crit strength. Now, again, this could be subjective because we're only using a small little time frame and example, and we are talking about some randomization here. But from the appearance of what we observed, it did not actually look like crit strength was affecting anything in game. Now, again, +2 is really not that big of a measurement here. We may actually have to go higher for that to actually account. So we're going to go and investigate that more.
Repent!
He deserved worse. Much worse.
Alrighty then, so that was a really interesting sequence there because we actually observed a lot of useful information that we need to talk about right now. So this test was initially to see if crit hit strength actually did anything, and it did, but it's a little bit strange on how it actually worked. So let's get to that right now. First of all, we have to account for a couple new variables that got introduced in this testing cycle. First of all, we went up a level, which gave us another point in warfare, which inadvertently also gave us more bonus range damage as well as bonus melee damage. So we have to account for that, you know, so boom, we'll have to put that in our damage calculations. And we also had to deal with a 5% reduction from the difficulty of the mission, which we've already accounted for the base damage unmitigated after all those other factors we would be shooting here. All right, and it comes out to 104. Now, if you remember correctly, previously it was like 108, so it did definitely affect it somewhat. Now, here's where things got very interesting. We were shooting at Space Marines and a Hellbrute, and if you guys noticed, our base damage was about 58. It was actually really low. And I know some of you are going to be pulling out the calculator going, well, that's like 46. Yeah, it is. Percent reduction there. Well, is it all just damage reduction, or is there some actual heat resist factored in there as well? So I started playing around with different variable numbers to try to see what we got. And what I came to is if you deduct 40%, you get 62.5 and change. Now, if you minus 4 more, you get 58. Well, that's kind of exactly what we were looking at there, wasn't it, guys? 58. So we can make the assumption here by the data that we just pulled that Space Marines and the Hellbrutes at these levels of difficulty and, you know, actual level of the character will have 40% damage reduction as well as a 4 heat resist. All right. Kind of seems a little bit logical there. Sure, why not? Now, when we were going through the criticals and going back and looking, we noticed we weren't really getting too much added on to those criticals in any way, shape, or form. We had a couple where it looked like, hey, that looks like some bit more got added there, and a couple others where it looked like it got more. And then we had others that were like 3Xs that had absolutely nothing added onto it. Matter of fact, if you go back and look at the match with the Hellbrute and you slow down quite a bit, you'll notice that there is a 203 there, guys. A 203. Well, let me show you something here. That's 3.5. That was literally 3.5. It came out to 203, and that's exactly what we saw. So, yeah, there was no actual crit strength being added there. But in others that was like 1.5 to 2.0, we noticed a little bit was getting added on there, but not a significant amount. So right now, I'm not really sure that crit hit strength is working as intended, and that's probably a good thing considering how many people are min-maxing right now and could definitely make some really disgusting builds. Remember, guys, this game just got launched, and right now the developers are focusing primarily on game stability and functionality. Things like stats and skills are a lesser priority for them, but it was kind of an interesting little example there. So right now, crit strength, not nearly as important as you might think. Maybe in terms of vulnerability applications, yeah, sure, why not? But for this testing cycle, crit strength really didn't kind of prove anything worthwhile. So if you're wondering whether or not it's a good thing to get on your build, it's not the worst thing. Eventually, it'll probably be a lot better than it currently is, but it's definitely less than spectacular. So who knows? Maybe you need something like 20 or 30 for it to be really good. But anyway, guys, that's going to be all for this video. I hope you liked the video. If you have any comments, leave them down below. Till next time, this is Shiv saying stay safe, have fun, may Iron Juice bless you. I'm out.
What do I do, Lord?
Destroy the child.
What do I do, Lord?
Corrupt them all.